much, Ms Quinn, for being here. You might recall that we had an exchange on 15 February this year about these PsiQuantum matters, and I asked you some questions about this.
I do recall that, yes.
Yeah, thanks. So one of the questions was, have there been any agreements between PsiQuantum and the government, the Commonwealth? And you said, I'm happy to take it on notice in terms of relation because there might be other engagements because other colleagues are dealing with quantum technology, etc. At this point in time, I'm not aware of any agreements with the company. So that's what you said, and then you provided some answers on notice. So is that right, that in February this year there'd been no agreement signed?
So this is a matter that comes under 1.2, which I was anticipating answering questions on this after dinner, because it goes to technology and science. So if we're going to get into detail, I won't have my appropriate officials here to go through all the issues on PsiQuantum, but we're absolutely happy to answer all those questions
from 6
o'clock.
I mean, we have questions about the contracts here because I thought those might have been of a corporate nature.
So, no, all of the engagements we've had with PsiQuantum has been managed through a technology task force in the Science and Technology Group. That team have led our engagements on this process across the government and with Queensland Government, and they have drawn on resources. But it might be best to kind of wrap it all up there.
Well, I mean, I don't mind. I mean, my understanding was that legal services was part of corporate.
So we procured legal services, and that was all done by the task force in terms of, as is usually the case. So, legal services are part, but it's more they provide enabling services to the areas within the department.
I think that just to assist I'm sure the committee is happy to ask appropriate questions at the appropriate time, but also wouldn't want to get into the situation where questions were being asked later that were referred back to the corporate group. Sure. It's worth just having this discussion between the Deputy Chair and yourself just to see what...
whether you have the right people here.
Sure.
Okay. So noting that my first question was just about the background to when contracts had been signed and the like, and I accept your initial answer. So from a legal services perspective, do you know whether the original value of the contract was $280,000?
So we did procure legal services. It was done through the task force. They will have details on the precise amounts. I do understand it is in that ballpark. We also procured services for a range of supports, such as investment banking support, commercial support, probity support. That was all managed through the task force, and they'll be able to answer all the questions of detail.
So you can't answer questions about legal services here in corporate?
Well, the contract management was done through the task force. They are the appropriate place. We can. We've got numbers of facts.
Are they far away? Are they in the building or?
No, they were scheduled to appear at 6 o'clock.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't want to be difficult, but it does this time of the day. But it does seem strange that legal services and procurement matters aren't in corporate.
Well, I think that I understand the difficulty, and I think there's a reasonableness in what the Chair's said about, first of all, these matters being dealt with in the appropriate bit, because staff will be on hand. The department, I understand, anticipates and welcomes being asked questions about this set of issues. What the Chair said, I think, is that we don't want to end up in a position where issues that could reasonably be canvassed in corporate are then sort of deferred back. May I just point out that the Secretary will be here for the whole day. One way of approaching this is, that we can deal with all of these issues when the appropriate officials are here. On that legal services question, to be clear, yes, the corporate has legal services, but as I understand the Secretary's answer, that the questions around the procurement of legal services, that is something that is done at that unit level.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this then, because I just want to make sure that we don't have a back and forth between different parts of the department. I mean, I'm grateful that you'll be here for the day, Ms Gwynn. So who are the officials here from corporate?
So I have my Deputy
Mr.
Secretary.
Mason? Yep.
And we have people related to our budget division, our legal and integrity, newly created division. We've got our IT department, our HR.
So, look, we're pretty collegiate in this committee, so, if your legal people are going to be here for the duration of the proceedings and not going to be disappearing, then I think we will be amenable to your proposal. My only concern would be that we don't want to have a ball going back and forth between different parts. So,
Can I just check a couple of details with the Secretary about this? Because I understand the proposition that's being put.
so well, I mean, what are we? Is this right? Seems very strange. Can we have a suspension and talk about this rather than?
The committee will suspend while we consider this. The committee resumes and the Deputy Chair has the call.
Okay, so just to put some scope around these questions. So these are questions about governance and legal services, which I imagine would be in the corporate section of this estimates hearing in the usual course of events. So who is the Chief Legal Officer in the department?
So we've recently created a legal and integrity division, and as a part of that movement, we have the division head of that division is colloquially called the Chief Legal Officer, and that is Janine Richards.
Okay, and she's here today?
Yes, she is.
Okay, so how many? And so she is the General Counsel, in effect, is she?
Yes.
Or the Chief Legal Officer? What's the title?
Chief Counsel.
Chief Counsel.
Chief Counsel.
Neil Mason, Deputy Secretary, Enabling Business Services, Chief Counsel.
Okay, and sorry, I've lost my pencil. So what was the name?
Chief Counsel and Head of Division.
And the actual name?
Oh, Janine Richards.
Janine Richards. Okay, so Ms Richards, I imagine, has been involved in the contracting done by the department on everything, right?
Senator, as the Secretary mentioned, the division was established a fortnight ago. So Janine took on that role.
So what was there before?
We had just a legal branch.
It's just sounding a lot like Yes Minister, I have to say.
I'm not trying to be difficult, Senator.
But it was a legal branch, now it's a division.
Yes.
What's the difference between a branch and a division?
So essentially, previously we had a branch, so one area of legal, sitting in with a broader area of corporate. It sat with property areas, HR areas and other functions.
How many people were in the branch?
In the legal branch, let me just see if I've got that to hand. As I look for that, Senator, when, as the Secretary mentioned a fortnight ago, we established a new division, we brought that branch out of the old division it was in and the integrity branch, and we formed a new group.
Okay, so what I'm asking is, how many people worked in the branch?
Yeah, I'm just seeing if I can pop my fingers on that, Senator. I think the number of public servants we had there at 31 March was about 55 odd.
55, and that did legal but other things, right?
They do a range of functions in that, including freedom of information, legal advice, ledge. Yep.
Okay, and now you've got a legal division.
Yes.
And how many people are in that?
So the division takes the resources that we had from the legal branch, it adds the resources we had in our integrity branch together to form the full division. Let me just see if I've got that total number here. Sorry, Senator, my numbers are just coming up a little bit slowly, that's all. So, 45, thank you.
45 people in the legal...
In integrity, and then we had the 55 in the legal branch, so we're at about 90-odd full-time equivalent staff.
In the legal?
Total for that new division I was just talking about.
How many of these people are lawyers?
That, Senator, I would need to take on notice because there'll be a mix.
A large number?
There'd be a significant portion, yes.
Okay, and this is led by Ms Richards?
It is, yes.
Okay, and as the chief lawyer in the department, would she be involved in all material contracting?
Senator, the legal team will provide commercial advice, but we have advice that also comes from our finance area when it comes to procurement, and business areas obviously lead the negotiations on those contracts.
Okay. And so what was the impetus to create this new division?
So, Senator, we've been on a bit of a journey for some time in building the assurance within the organisation. It commenced post the machinery of government changes when the department became Industry, Science and Resources. The first part of that was the build of an integrity branch, which we did around 12 to 13 months ago. That originally commenced as part of a group within our grants division. And over time we've seen the opportunities to grow the amount of assurance we're providing both within the organisation and also supporting the work that we do on behalf of government. And we made the decision some weeks ago that now was the right time to bring a range of those assurance functions together to give us more scale and an opportunity to see things across the portfolio.
Were there some risks in the structure that you were concerned about that led to this new division as well?
Senator, as I mentioned, the opportunity for us was to continue essentially the continuum we had been on, which was about strengthening the integrity and assurance that we were performing in the portfolio, and the decision was a natural consequence of progressing that journey.
Okay. And so Ms Richards reports to you?
Yes.
Okay. And do you look at material legal contracts?
Well, Senator, we enter into a range of contracts, as you'd appreciate. And certainly the ones that relate to the functions that I perform, depending on the type of contract, I'll be involved in those. But obviously the business area that are working on that piece of work and negotiating that contract will be the ones that take the lead for both the negotiation of that and the decision-making under the contract.
Okay. So in relation to the PsiQuantum matters, do you see those contracts or do they go to Ms Richards?
Senator, as the Secretary mentioned, the discussion and the work that was done for PsiQuantum was done in a task force, and that was in a different group that are scheduled to appear after.
So it doesn't come to you at all?
That particular piece, no, because the decision was to run it from a task force. That's not uncommon.
So it doesn't run as part of the department?
No. Just to clarify, it definitely is part of the department.
So who does it report to?
So it was situated within the Science and Technology group and reported through.
I'm looking at your organisational chart here. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's part of the Science and Technology area, is it?
Yes.
And who's the head of that?
We've got Ms Helen Wilson is the Deputy Secretary of that group, and Mr Anthony McGregor is the Division Head. Okay,
and so when this division needs legal services, where do they go?
So it depends on the nature, just like any other division or component of the department. If it's something that our internal lawyers can provide or some advice, or they contract out to the market.
Okay, so just so I can piece this all together, so with the PsiQuantum contract, it was dealt with by a task force outside of the usual legal channels?
No, that's not correct.
Okay, so your internal lawyers still had engagement on
it? We can check, but it depends what your question is. So in terms of managing...
It's not a trick question. I'm trying to work out whether your internal legal division had some input into the contracting.
So they would have potentially been involved. I'm happy to have someone come to the table.
Well, it might be helpful if Ms Richards can come to the table.
Yeah.
She's the chief
So
lawyer.
the usual operation is that if a policy area, as part of their policy development work or their implementation work, requires support on a legal question, they may initially go to our internal legal services. They would have a discussion about the scale and scope and expertise required, and then there would be a decision about whether there needed to be additional resources brought in. It is not uncommon for significant work programs to contract external expertise, and that was the case in the PsiQuantum process. And so there was a decision to have external expertise come in. That was we then go to market. We use the usual arrangements through government panel arrangements often the Department of Finance panel arrangements, and we go through the usual contracting process and then management of that contract. Most of that is done by the area that is doing the policy work or the implementation work, with the sort of technical assistance, if required, from our procurement area in our CFO area or our legal services area that is now in a new legal and integrity division.
Okay.
I'm happy to be contradicted on this question by the department, but what I've heard is consistent with what I understand, and that is there is a legal capability within the department which sits in corporate. If the question is about HR issues that have got a legal dimension, buying a building, doing a commercial lease, health and safety issues, insurance, that range of corporate governance and risk management, and whatever else sort of questions, they are the people who would normally be engaged in that kind of work. When it comes to the business of executing a process around an investment that engages other parts of government as well, of course. Then that is not a capability that they have inside, which is why there's not an effort to... There are questions that we anticipate that I'm sure will be very good questions, and they'll have very good answers. Sure. And I'm very happy for you to ask. I'm just anticipating that you're not going to get into be able to get much satisfaction out of the discussion at this level. But
thanks very much.
Feel free.
I mean, for my sins, I was an internal auditor at Ernst & Young, so I've looked at lots of these processes before, and in my limited knowledge, it has always been the case that legal services and management of those services will be done by a corporate part of an organisation, particularly in a government. It wouldn't be, the chief scientist wouldn't be signing the contract with, I hope not, the chief scientist wouldn't be signing the contract with PsiQuantum. That would be done inside a proper governance environment. And if you're not doing that, then you may need an internal audit done. So, look, I just wanted to ask you some questions about the management of this contract, which is pretty simple. And I think that they can be answered by lawyers, frankly. So I've got a contract here from AusTender I'd like to table with the committee's good wishes, and just ask you about the legal component here of the contract and how it's been managed. So maybe is it appropriate for me to ask Ms Richards whether you have had any engagement with the contracts with King of Wood Mallesons?
Thanks, Senator. Janine Richards, Chief Legal Counsel and Head of Division for Legal and Integrity. So, as the Secretary has explained, the division was established only recently, so I commenced in this role formally from the 13th of May. So, Senator, I have not personally had engagement, and been involved in the contracts that were set up with King Wood Mallesons, but I can talk generally to the way that we manage our legal services and legal service engagement, and the proportion of work that's performed by in-house lawyers as opposed to the work that we give to external lawyers. As the Minister's explained, we do maintain particular capability in-house to deal with the services that were required on a general basis. When we have bespoke or particular legal issues or commercial agreements, we will go to external providers who've got expertise that is greater than ours on those particular issues to provide assistance in the delivery of advice to the department and to government.
So what day did you, and congratulations of course, what day did you begin in the role?
The 13th of May. 13th
of May. So I think there have been some revisions to this King of Wood Mallesons contract since the 13th of May. Have you had any engagement on those revisions?
Not in that period, I have not. That's not to say, though, we do have an capability in-house. Part of the service that our division branch provides is to support the procurement of external legal services. So people in the task force needed, as you're suggesting, legal advice. They would come to the internal lawyers in the first instance and describe the nature of the services and the assistance that they need. We will work with them to make a decision in terms of is that a service that we've got the expertise to provide, or should we put them in touch with somebody else. We will go through the process, though, in terms of the whole of government legal services panel, to help them test the market and procure legal services and make a decision about an engagement of an external provider.
Okay, so this might be a dumb question, but so if I was to ask you about the value of this contract and how it's been managed over time, including while you've been in the role, that's not something that you would like to answer?
I would take it on notice, Senator, because, as I said, I've been in the role for 3 weeks. It's crept up on Mr Mason, but I haven't probably been in a position to answer detailed questions on the expenditure incurred in that contract in the last 3-week period.
So who would we ask?
On that question, Ms Richards has taken on notice because she must. The department will be in a position to answer that question and others related to it in the bit of the program that's been dealt with, because the right people will be here who can talk about the scope of the legal work that was executed by the contractor.
Okay, well, maybe I'll just ask the Secretary then. So I believe this contract's gone from $200K to over $3 million. Is that a normal thing to happen?
It's quite often that we, it depends on the nature of the project, but it's not unusual if you're working through a phased approach to an issue that you may start with a certain tasking, and then you kind of progress over time as you go through phased steps. So that was the case with the PsiQuantum due diligence process, where we stepped through things in a phased and methodical approach. And so it doesn't surprise me that that's how we manage our arrangements for effective expenditure of taxpayers' money.
Doesn't surprise you that a legal services contract is blown out by 1,000% and cost taxpayers over $3 million?
Well, it hasn't blown out.
It's gone from 200,000 to over $3 million.
So the services that we procured have been adjusted as we've moved through a process. I don't think that I wouldn't characterise that as a blowout.
So why was it changed so much?
Partly as we worked through the process and the sorts of questions that we needed to get advice on, the issues that we needed to resolve. This was a commercial negotiation that has many twists and turns, as all commercial negotiations do. It's appropriate for us to monitor what we can do in-house and where we need external expertise. We were working through a due diligence and commercial process and due diligence process, as many people do, and that is usually a phased approach, stepping through. Some things come up during those discussions. Different aspects are required to get advice on. This was a very thorough and considered a process.
I mean, some of the amendments and adjustments, one of the amendments to the contract is $1.5 million. Like, that's a lot of legal services in one amendment.
Senator, this is a significant investment by the Commonwealth. Significant investment. It's not handing out a grant. It's a significant investment. As that due diligence process, which the department will be able to give you much more detail about late this afternoon, as that progresses, whether it's a commercial negotiation and a merger and acquisition between two companies, or a trade negotiation between two countries, or an investment between a private investment facility and some investment target. As the process moves on, it becomes deeper and more granular, because the level of assurance and complexity becomes more intense.
So what is the reason that this has gone up so much?
And let me finish the answer. And that is an entirely normal and frankly would be very odd if it was different. And in terms of the detail, as we must keep insisting, in terms of the detail of why that is, the correct officials will be here who will be in a position to answer those questions. It should be a source of comfort to you and to others that a capable external legal firm is engaged in the way that it has been in this very significant and important investment.
Look, I understand that you don't know all the detail here. I respect that. But, Secretary, do you know the primary reason why this has gone from a $200,000 to a over $3 million contract?
As I mentioned, we've gone through a phased approach in relation to engagements with the company and our engagements with the Queensland Government as well. And so as we have gone through that phased approach, the nature of the tasks and the process and advice that we were providing has changed. From the very first phase is an evaluation at a very high level about whether this was an opportunity for Australia to pursue. You move through into greater depth. As you get into the situation of negotiating complex legal agreements, you need more legal services. And so there was a phased approach to this due diligence, as there is in all other experiences I've had in dealing with commercial negotiations. And so as you get into the detailed legal negotiations on complex legal documents that will stand for decades, it's important that you have appropriate legal advice, and that's what we sought, not just legal advice but also commercial advice.
Okay, so it sounds like the position is that the officials that know the detail on this are not in the building at the moment. Is that right?
So the officials that worked on the task force and the discussions and negotiations through this process will be appearing at 6 o'clock. I can provide you with a sequence and schedule of how the services contract. So we have the facts and figures and the times and the dates. But if you would like more nuance on the elements, then they might be able to provide you more information. But the short answer is that you start where you start and you end where you end, and what you need in the process in the middle is a function of the engagements you have.
Yeah, well, I mean, the department gave a statement to the media, I think, this week saying that there was an increase in intensity and depth of the contract, which gave rise to the extraordinary cost blowout from $200,000 to over $3 million. So what was that?
So I'd have to double check the answer to the media inquiry you're referring to.
Yeah.
But there was an increase in the intensity and depth of the engagement and activity.
But what does that mean? I don't understand what that means.
So when you're having a conversation with an organisation about a possible commercial discussion, you start at a high level to see whether there's a meeting of minds, and as you work through negotiations, issues arise that require kind of particular legal advice. PsiQuantum is a significant company with a great deal of expertise and opportunity, and we were working through detailed activities to make sure that any engagement with the government was A, risk mitigated, B, had appropriate opportunities for Australia. So this was a commercial negotiation that required quite a deal of support.
I understand that.
Senator, I have to say this is a very surprising line of questioning. Like, it is actually quite odd, because consider the counterfactual. That is, somebody sits in an office and imagines the full scope over whatever the period was, without any regard to whether a due diligence process would end in a successful investment or end in the Commonwealth walking away. And that you negotiate some contract for legal services unknown. I mean, that would indicate some strange governance of this. It is absolutely normal. We can answer this at a headline level, and the Secretary has now, but we are offering to you, happy to talk about the ins and outs of the qualitative issues that surrounded decisions to move on through the contract, but it is absolutely normal in any acquisition or investment that as each phase of the due diligence process concludes, it either concludes with move on to the next phase or don't move on, and that work will become deeper and more granular over time, and it would be a bit strange if the Commonwealth and the department weren't investing in the proper legal services to deliver the right result.
No, thanks for that. Thanks for that. I mean, I'm just getting the wind up from the chair here. So I do want to ask one last question.
One final question, yeah.
So, I mean, the reason this is a matter of public interest is because of the amount of taxpayer funds that have been spent here on a contract. And if you were in my position, you would be asking the same questions. That's why we have Senator estimates. So I think it's a reasonable...
I think it'd be a very different line of questioning. Senator Bragg.
Well, you can...
honestly.
You're entitled to... We don't have to agree.
No, you get to choose how you spend your time, that's true.
But we have this process because people's taxes are supposed to be spent well, and so we always try and minimise waste, of course. But the reason that these are of interest is because I asked the department in February whether in fact there had been an agreement with this company, and it was said then in February, on 15 February, that there was no agreement. But is it possible that this King & Wood Mallesons agreement was established for the purposes of an engagement with PsiQuantum back in August last year?
So I stand by the estimates answer that I provided last time, that there was no agreement at that time.
Okay.
And that is the case. We were in discussions with PsiQuantum in terms of moving through a due diligence process. And I'm very happy with my officials here to go through that in as much detail, the phases and the steps and what we did in as much detail as I'm able to at 6 o'clock. We did engage King Wood Mallesons and other external advisors.
From 9 August, yeah?
In this, I've got 9 August, yes, that's right.
So due diligence started with PsiQuantum on 9 August?
Due diligence started, discussions with PsiQuantum started a little earlier than that. I can go through all the details, if you want, in the appropriate session. But there were phases. In August, the decision was taken that we required external legal advice to be able to progress our discussions, and we did that working through the procurement process with our Department of Finance colleagues.
Okay, I'll share the call and we'll